Grief touches every life and tests every heart. Even when we prepare for grief, it often knocks us to our knees. We are the Time with Giants show. Join us as we connect with giants of the faith who are experiencing the power of God in the midst of chaos. Whether your life is going great or you are in the middle of that chaos, welcome to our show.
So even when my eyes can't see it, and even when my heart can't feel it, my mouth will still repeat it. God, I trust you.
Welcome to Time with Giants show. We're so thankful that you have joined us. My name's Chris Wall, and this is
Emily Kuykendall.
and we are excited to be with you today. We have some incredible guests today. You know, our focus is time with giants, and you know that seems strange because spending time with giants really is a spiritual discipline. I believe it's a biblical principle that all through history, God has put people on the earth who have walked with him, and they sharpen us and they strengthen us, and God uses them. And yes, we need the Spirit of God, and he gives us his presence, and he gives us his Spirit. He gives us his word. And in those two things, there are great power. But he also gives us people. That's why he built the church. And the purpose of our podcast for this season is we're leaning into grief and loss. And I'm excited about today because we have some friends with us that are really going to help us tackle an important issue. And this issue is, how do you help somebody that has gone through loss? Because all of us do that. All of us know somebody. We've been in situations where we have friends who have gone through maybe a loss of a child or a death in their family. And what are the best things you can do to help them? And you know, it's our goal for this season to really process how to trust the Lord in grief and in loss. And we have seen some incredible giants of the faith this season. And this is our last episode in this season.
Season one.
Season one is wrapping up today. And you know, our prayer and our goal always is that God uses this short little podcast to strengthen your faith. Emily, remember our verse?
Yes, it's Romans 15:13. And it says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may overflow with hope." So we hope that interacting with these awesome giants of the faith, with Richard and Marlo, that you would leave this episode today feeling encouraged and feeling the love of Jesus that he has for you, because your story matters to him. So Richard and Marlo, would you just introduce yourselves to us?
My name is Richard. I'm married to Marlo. We live here in Richmond, Virginia. We've got 3 older children besides Anna, who we'll tell you our story about in just a little bit. We both actually work for the International Mission Board. So I'm the chief legal counsel. We've been here about 13 years. And so that's, you know, how we spend our days. We just actually graduated our youngest son from college. So we're kind of looking at a whole new phase in life here.
So by chief legal counsel, that means you're a lawyer, right?
That is correct. Yeah, that's a lawyer. So I'm a lawyer. You know, IMB, we are a multinational company. And so we're all over the world solving the world's greatest problem, which is lostness, right? That's our tagline, our mission, our vision. And, you know, anytime you get overseas, there's a complicated legal environment. So that's kind of why, that's our contribution. That's kind of why we're here. That's why IMB, you know, has me and my team. But that's kind of what we're about.
That is really fascinating. You know, I'm a trustee right now for the IMB, and just getting to rub shoulders with what you have to do. It's fascinating. You have to know law all over the world, and that is an incredible.
I got to know somebody that knows the law. You know, I know a guy that knows the laws of wherever, because there's no way I could be an expert. So I'm kind of a facilitator. Connector, broker. I do have to have some legal knowledge, which is fun and interesting. So I mean, it's like the greatest job in the world. So I can't believe that I get to do this every day. I've told our president that I love my job. It's just, there's a lot to love. there's a lot of things that we have to tangle with. But it's really where God has called us to be very clearly 13, 14 years ago now. And so I really can just every day wake up and say, all right, I'm here, God. What do you want now? What's the next thing today? And until, I can't do it anymore. So
Marlo, tell us about you.
Well, I just want to tell you that we love being here and working for the IMB. I work in the training department with our new missionaries, but this was not the life that we had planned. And so I think that's one of the things that I tell people when I comfort them, is because life doesn't often turn out the way you planned it. And so we were actually in the process to go overseas. We had done a 2-year term overseas, and he was getting some more law experience so that we could go back overseas and help people set up platforms to be in some of these closed countries. But that's when our daughter got cancer. And so we had to withdraw from the process. And so that was our plan. But God had a different plan for us. And so even our daughter's cancer, her death, is a part of our story and is a way that we got here where we are today.
And hey, listeners, I want you to think about this, and let's just connect a little dot here, because sometimes when you think of a missionary, you might think of someone that's wearing some kind of robe and you're walking around the desert. But there's lots of ways to serve the Lord as missionaries.
Absolutely.
And Richard and Marlo are perfect examples of that, because they're gifted with a law degree, and these kind of pursuits can be used to serve the Lord. So you may be good at something that God can use on the mission field. And this is why I'm grateful to rub shoulders with the IMB, because we have pathways that you could serve the Lord all over the world. So maybe that's something you ought to pray about. God, should I consider using my gifts and abilities to go serve the Lord around the world? And that's something that I just really appreciate you both and that example that you're setting. And let's process your story. One of the things that I'm grateful that you are with us today, because it's in that loss that God has really equipped you to help people who have gone through loss. And I just want to hear about your story. Tell us about your daughter.
Well, it's interesting because when you asked us to do this podcast last night, we were discussing this, and let me tell you, the floodgates opened as we went back in time. It's been 15 years since our daughter passed away. But if you know anything about grief, the more time that goes by, you still have these intense feelings can still come back, and you're just as sad as you were. It doesn't happen near as often, and it doesn't last as long as it does at the beginning. But it's still, you can remember, you can put yourself back where you were in the hospital. So with us, we had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. We were living in Oklahoma City. We had been there for 10 years. Richard grew up there. But when we got back from our 2 years assignment overseas, we moved back to Oklahoma City. And we were very happy there with our perfect family, perfect job. He worked downtown Oklahoma City in a law firm. And our youngest daughter got sick, and we just thought it was a virus, but she just didn't get better. And so we kept taking her back to the doctor. And finally they admitted her at the hospital there. It was Baptist Hospital, right?
And how old was she? How old was she when?
2.5. And so when it came back that she had liver cancer, a 2.5-year-old with liver cancer, it was like this 1 in a million. It's a very rare cancer. Nobody at Children's had even treated that before. And so there were some mistakes made in her treatment because they hadn't treated that. Richard was actually my hero because she had a living donor transplant, or a liver transplant. So I don't know if you know this, but you can cut out part of someone's liver and it grows back. So he gave her part of his liver, and that was done in Delaware. We tried to find any doctor who had treated this before. And so we flew to Wilmington, Delaware for treatment. And she had a liver transplant that summer. She was diagnosed in February. So that summer we had a liver transplant. So that was really hard because we had 3 other kids. We had a family, a house in Oklahoma City, but we were being treated in Delaware. So we spent a lot of time apart. Our kids, I would just farm them out to all of our friends. And anyway, that was a really hard season.
I think the reason we did that, I think this is something important for when you're going through things with your family or for your children. I mean, it was a long way away and hard to get there. It's not that far from where we are now, actually. We can actually drive there. But our goal was, we don't know how this is going to end, but we want to do the very best we can with what we know at that time. So when we look back, we could say, you know what, we did everything we could do. Like, we don't know how so if it ends badly, then we could say we did everything we knew how to do. We fought to the last breath. We got her the best people we could find. We didn't, and I think that's important. That kind of gave us some peace of mind as after the outcome, after she passed away.
Right, because regret is a part of grief, no matter what. That's just something you're going to have is regret, but we were able to comfort ourselves. Yes, we did everything we could. There was other things we regretted, but with that, we were able to comfort ourselves with that. So she had one liver transplant. The cancer came back. They did a cadaver donor the next summer. They flew us back out there. We got another liver transplant. They tried to cut up farther to give us clean margins that time. And then the cancer came back. So she had just round after round of chemo. She had more surgery, but finally they just came to us and they said, there's nothing more we could do. And by that time she was 5 years old. And then she passed away when she was 5.5.
Yeah, the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And I think what made it really, really hard for us was, this was a rare kind of cancer, although actually it was the same kind of cancer that the McAfee's daughter had on your last podcast, right?
On episode 8.
Yeah.
Liver cancer. So same kind. And, when we were first diagnosed, of course, everybody wants to know the numbers, right? You want to know what the cure rate is or what the remission rate is. You want to know what the other cases say. And so we were told that, that this is one of the good cancers to have, for children. There's an 85% total cure rate after 4 rounds of chemo, 1 surgery, and 2 more rounds of chemo, and you're done. So we thought 6 months, we're going to get through this. We're going to praise the Lord. We're going to thank him for his faithfulness. And so our outcome was like, well, yeah, this is all right. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a great story for the kids. We can just talk about and we can celebrate Anna.
We can be on a podcast.
We could be on a
Yeah.
podcast. You know what podcasts are, but we're going to have. And so part of the struggle that we had was this girl had not just 1 liver transplant, but 2 liver transplants, not just 6 rounds of chemo, but multiple rounds of chemo, 2 other surgeries. She lived in the hospital. And so part of it was like, wow, why was that, God? What happened? What did we do wrong? Like, that we got like out of all, to get cancer is bad. To get a rare cancer is even more bad. But good news, you got one of the good kinds of rare cancers. Oh, great. And then it just doesn't go away, no matter how hard we tried. And ultimately, the doctors told us that the best guess they had, which is kind of what they do when they don't know for sure, like we all do, is that this was just some very aggressive strain of what would otherwise be a pretty treatable cancer. And so that was hard for us because you get to know other families in the process. And, some kids live and some kids die. And so we kind of thought we would be in the survivor camp. And then it became apparent that we were going to be in the club nobody wants to be a part of. And just to even make that adjustment was really hard because we started off with the expectation of how this is all going to end. I think that's kind of what Marlo was saying. You don't really know how the story's going to end. It's just this strange, like, we don't know what the rules are anymore, kind of uncertainty that really, really challenged our faith.
And I don't know if you can even give an answer to this, but how did you seek to maintain hope and think positively while still facing reality?
So for me, my hope was that she would be healed. I hoped that all along. It didn't look that way, but I always had hope. And then she died, and it was like, I have no hope. And that's a bad place to be. But what I realized was that I was hoping in the wrong thing. I was hoping in something that was temporary. So even if she had lived, we're all going to die. So it was like, okay, I have to put my hope past this life into the next life. And so I think that's really important, is to hope in the right thing. Because if your hope is just that everything will work out and, you'll get what you want, that's not really a sustainable hope, because this life is so temporary. So I think having the right hope, having an eternal hope, was what I had to switch my mind to after she died.
That's so important, and I think that's a great
It's wise.
piece of wisdom right there, as because our hope is in Christ. I mean, it's appointed for a man once to die. We know that from Scripture, but man, as I hear your story, you're not only dealing with grief yourself, but you were also helping your other kids grieve. How tell me about that? How
And,
did you?
and how old were they when Anna went to heaven?
The oldest was 11, 6 years older than her. Yeah, 11. And so he was the oldest, and then there were two more between her. So they were young. It's really hard to grieve and help your kids grieve. And kids grieve so much differently. I don't remember a lot of that. Do you remember how we helped them?
The honest truth is, and if our children are listening to this podcast, we love you so much, and you're so cherished and super important. But for that season, I mean, one of the regrets that I have was that we didn't take more time to invest in them. We were so consumed, both of us. I mean, taking care of Anna was a full-time job for Marlo, for sure. I was trying to keep my full-time job at my law firm. And so our kids were incredibly resilient, Jacob and Audra and Will. And because our lives were so chaotic for really 2.5 years, they would pretty much wake up not knowing what their day was going to look like. And we had my parents, Marlo's parents, we had friends that just showed up, and we would kind of lead the schedule, because if Anna got sick in the middle of the night, for example, she spiked a fever in the middle of the night. Well, that means we put her in the car and go to the hospital at midnight or 1 a.m. or 4 a.m. And we go to bed, we kiss the kids goodnight, and then the kids wake up in the morning, and Granny and Papa are there, Cindy and Papa are there, or other friends. And it's like, oh, we're with you today? Okay. All right. And so they were really, really flexible and resilient because they're kids. But I think we're just now beginning to process that with them. They processed it a lot, I think, in their own way, the best they could at that age. After she died, we tried several grief groups. There's one in Oklahoma City that we went to that was for survivors of the Oklahoma City bombing. We went to that for several weeks, and we did things through our church. But I think it's really hard for parents to try to help their kids through it. And typically what we read, and what I think what we're finding, is that they have to kind of process that out of their own time frame. And as you get older, you can begin to have conversations about what it was like, and apologize for how you kind of didn't give them all the attention you wished you could have. At least that's been my experience.
Right. And then when she died, I realized I hadn't been there for a lot of the last 3 years with them, because I was in Delaware. And so I was like, okay, I can't just crawl in bed like I would like to do and pull the covers over my head. I've got to be there for them now, because I haven't been there for them. So that was a really tough season, because if you just stuff your grief down and just pretend it's not there, it just starts coming out in other ways. And so I got really sick all the time. I was always sick. And I finally went to a minor emergency place, and he said, I think you're depressed. And I was like, no, I'm not depressed. I'm getting up. I'm taking care of my kids. And he was like, well, it's going to come out some way if you're not dealing with it. So then I realized, oh, I didn't know that about grief. That I didn't know that after someone died, that wasn't the worst time. I think that's something I would like to tell people, that don't be surprised when it gets a lot worse before it gets better. It does get better, but I had no idea that it would get worse before it got better. It's more like a U shape. So there's the death, and then it gets worse, and then you start getting better. But it just takes a lot longer than you think.
I think that's really important for people to understand, because I think sometimes people that are going through that kind of cycle just think, well, I'm terrible, or
I'm too weak.
I'm too weak. I can't handle this, or whatever. They just tend to think they're the worst. The truth is that's everyone. It's just part of that struggle. How did it shape your kids? Because now they're obviously love you and have finished college and these things. It had to have shaped them. Have they ever processed that a little bit with you of how it shaped them in their lives?
They talk about it with each other.
Well, one of the things that they told us, and we didn't even realize this, kids are really sensitive to the emotions of their parents. And, they saw the burden that we were carrying, and it was immense. It was a heavy burden before she died, for sure. And then after she died, certainly that whole burden. And they saw that. And I think like kids love their parents. They want to make their parents happy. They don't want to add grief to their parents. And so a lot of times kids don't want to talk about stuff. They don't want to be a bother. They don't want to make it harder for their parents. So we'll talk about it amongst themselves, but they don't want to come to the parents and say, man, I'm struggling, Dad. Could you help me? Because they don't want to make it worse. They want to try to make your lives better. And so I think that's something for parents to be very mindful of. And it's okay to initiate those conversations and to press in a little bit and to make sure that they know that, and this is again, the things I wish I would have said. I feel like I failed in every which way possible on this because there's no way to do it right. You want to try to do grief right, and you read the books, and there's a dozen books on grief, and 11 out of 12 are kind of garbage. You want to find books that really are solid and acknowledge that it's a process, but it takes a long time. I mean, it took me 3 years before I could even say Anna died. I couldn't even get the words out of my mouth that she died. She went to be with Jesus. She's with her home in heaven. She had her home going. Every euphemism that I could find, that was all I could muster. So, and somebody told us when she first died or thereabouts that it would probably take about 4 years. And of course, I thought, oh, 4 years, that's ridiculous. I'm fine. I'm a Christian. I've got the Bible. It's not going to be 4 years. Maybe I'll give myself 6 months. That'll be fine. But no, as Marlo said, it was 4 years. I mean, it was 3 to 4 years before I woke up one day.Maybe you had the same experience too. And you had this feeling, this weird feeling that you hardly recognized. And I realized it was the feeling of being happy. Like, oh, I forgot what it felt like to be happy. I think this is pretty good, and it wasn't even anything big. So yeah, so I think it's a mistake to rush through it. It's a mistake to push somebody through it. If you're with somebody that is grieving, give them time, let them go at their own pace, and recognize it as a journey in the process. And you're gonna fall down a lot, but keep going.
Man, I think
That's a good word.
that's a good word. You both are giants of the faith, and I just am honored that you would allow us, with those that listen to this podcast, to kind of come into this sacred, special place. Thank you.
It's challenging when we love someone so much and we see them hurt. And I think sometimes it can lead to us wanting to help in ways that isn't always helpful. And so, from someone who has been through the deepest of trenches, what did your friends and family do that was really helpful and made you feel loved and helped you feel the hope of Christ? And what wasn't so helpful?
We both remember this man that showed up the day after she died and raked our leaves. We've never forgotten that.
Yeah, and you know who you are if you're listening. Yeah, and I think part of that is because a lot of people will say, let us know if there's anything we can do for you. Hey, can I help you with anything? Yeah, I don't know, like, can you bring my daughter back to life? That would be really helpful for me if you could do that. But since you can't do that, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I mean, yeah, I have a million things to do. Like, I'm so busy grieving, like, I can't even make a to-do list for you. So that's a little harsh in the response. So I'm sorry, but that's kind of what that feels like sometimes. I know it's well-intentioned, but so I think, if you want to help, if you see a need, then just take action. just do it. If the yard needs to be mowed, just show up and you'll mow the yard. And you may not even, that person may not rush out and say, oh, thank you for mowing the yard, but they'll know it and they'll remember it, right? So I think part of it is just taking action if you see a need. Not obviously don't be intrusive and don't make a pest of yourself and don't do things that are kind of obnoxious. But if you see a little need, then it's okay. Because if you ask somebody what they need, or can I help you, or call me if you need anything, I can almost guarantee you that they're never going to call, because like that's just like one more thing on my to-do list, and I can't do that.
That's really good. Marlo, you said something, or one of you did, about sometimes when you lose a child, you felt like you messed up.
There was a mistake made in her treatment early on because
Yeah.
it was rare cancer and they hadn't treated it. And so I had to forgive that doctor for messing up, for not doing the right thing. He didn't know, but I had a lot of anger towards him. If I hadn't let that go, that could have eaten me up. What I finally came to after a long time was the fact that God could have healed her, even if he made a mistake. God could have healed her the first surgery. He could have healed her the second surgery. He could have healed her at any point. And so rather than thinking that doctor had authority over whether she lived or died, I had to give that up to God and say, he is sovereign. Even if that doctor made a mistake, he is sovereign over whether she lived or died.
Sometimes people don't know what to say when something like this happens. They don't know what to say to somebody. Give some advice there. Like you mentioned one thing, don't just say, hey, let me know how I can help. What else can
Don't say anything. I mean, I remember, it's just, if you don't know what to say, you don't even have to say anything. Just show up.
Yeah.
Just be there. We know the people who backed away from us. And we know the people who leaned in toward us, and they didn't have the answers. We didn't have the answers. We didn't expect them to have the answers. And we didn't need a Bible gun shot at us with a verse, a Band-Aid patched on this gaping wound. It wasn't what we needed. That would be like Job's friends trying to comfort him, but just presence, just being the hands and feet of Christ and being with someone. She had a surgery at Baptist. We had 40 people in the waiting room. And so just being there, sitting there with us was good.
Yeah, and that in and of itself, I mean, one, it was good for us when we're in the surgery, and people aren't trying to fix things. I guarantee that in 10 words or less, you're not going to share the perfect Bible verse that we don't already know. What? I mean, God works all things together for good. Romans 8:28. Why? All my problems are solved then. I no worry that you're not going to solve those things with a simple thing or a simple word, or here's the right verse. Oh, I didn't know that. But your presence is important, both for the people that are grieving or struggling or suffering, because they say, hey, you know what? We're not alone. Part of suffering is and grieving is feeling like I've lost something precious, and I'm more alone because of that. Right? We lost our daughter. That's never going to change. We were a family of 6. I thought someday after Anna died, I would get used to being a family of 5. But the reality is that we are, and always will be a family of 6 minus 1. That's just the way it is. Like you never forget that person. And so the gathering of God's people around families is a comfort to the ones that are grieving and struggling and suffering, but also it's a real witness, because the world doesn't have that kind of community. And so I remember one of the doctors it was Integris Baptist, he came out, the waiting room was packed, and I don't know what time of day it was, but it was packed. And he was looking for us to give us an update on something. And he said, who are all these people? Well, this is our family. This is the church that comes around us. Wow. I mean, it made it, I don't know what his spiritual condition was, but it was like, wow, the church shows up. And that is the sweetest thing the church can do, is show up. And that's all. I think saying, say nothing is good advice. It's a good start. I do think, though, it's important. We talked about this. When you go through things that are interruptions of the normal order, a child dying before his parents, right? Not the way things should work. That doesn't make sense to our logical order of life. And so it's unsettling, it's kind of horrifying. People don't know what to say. There is nothing to say. But I think, so one mistake is saying something that's sort of inappropriate or like trying to help, but it's not that helpful. I think the other mistake you can make, though, is by just acting as if like that person never existed. Like we never mentioned, we never talk about Anna now. We don't talk about Anna. And so we kind of liked it when people would come up and tell us stories about Anna, because there was a lot of stuff we just didn't know, or they shared a picture. Hey, I found this picture of Anna and my child playing together. I mean, yeah, and that was, did we cry a little bit? Yeah. But it was like, it didn't
make us any more sad.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I would agree with him. We talked about that last night, to talk about the person and to let them tell you their story, ask them questions, tell me what happened, because when you do go through something traumatic, you are thinking about it all the time, and it helps to be able to verbalize it and tell people your story. You have to do that over and over and over again. And so they may not want to talk about it, but give them the opportunity. Yeah.
That is gold. That is just gold, because so often people go, I don't want to say anything.
I don't want to make them sad.
And then but you do want to remember. My dad just died, and a lady in our church just the other day texted me a picture of my dad at one of my son's baseball games, Anna Grill. And I thought, I loved that. That meant so much to me. And Marlo, I'm just really, one of the things I'm just really impressed with what you did. You already talked about forgiveness, how that was so important. You didn't hold on to bitterness, but you also got proactive and did something for others. And I think that's a really good practice in when you're sad and you're going through difficulty. It's healing to do for others. Describe to our listeners what you've done, because you did it for Michael and Lauren. And describe that whole process, what you've done.
One of the first things I did, I love that Romans 15:13 is your theme verse, because one of the first things we did, we were contacted from OU Children's, and they said, would you like to fund a parent room? So it'd be a bedroom where parents could take naps at the hospital. And so they said, you need to raise $10,000. Well, I hate asking for money, but I put that out there. I had a blog, and within the month we had way over $10,000. And so we got to decorate this room at the hospital, and on the wall I had that verse. I didn't put the reference because I wasn't sure that they would let me put that up there. In fact, when the president of the hospital came on a tour, he looked at that and he goes, are we allowed to have that up there? I was like, well, it's up there. I don't know why, but you're allowed,
Anna's room.
It's Anna's room. That's what it said on the door, Anna's room. And it was decorated with butterflies. And that's another story, because she asked, we talked about heaven, how you're going to get a new body. And she was like, well, how does that work? And so the only thing we could think of was a caterpillar and a butterfly. So we said, well, right now you're like a caterpillar, and when you get to heaven, you'll be like a butterfly. Because I'm telling it to a 5-year-old, explaining heaven and death to a 5-year-old.
Okay, that just hit my heart.
It's making me weep.
That's for older than 5-year-olds.
Yeah. So we said that she died right after Thanksgiving, and we had already put up this little tree. And so that tree is still up in our house, and people just send us butterflies. And so it's our butterfly tree. And so it's covered with butterflies, and it sits in our entryway. And so that's, it's her new body, but it's also just our new life in Christ is the butterfly. So I have them all over. There's my little bag I'm carrying. One of the other things that we did, so Anna carried this little doll. This is Baby. And she had Baby everywhere, all the time in the hospital. She carried her by the hair, and this was her constant companion. And a few years ago, one of my friends, she was the art lady actually at the hospital, she wrote and she said, I have this idea to rescue dolls. So like she goes to Goodwill and rescues these dolls and cleans them up And then she has these ladies make their clothes. So here's one right here. So she has these ladies in Oklahoma City make their clothes. Another group makes these little quilts that they give with them, and then they give them out. And I'm going to read you what the tag says that is on them. It says, once upon a time, there was a perfect baby doll. She was soft and clean. Her hair was smooth and shiny, and her dress was pink. Wherever Anna went, baby went too. Her hair clutched in Anna's tiny fingers. Through the years, baby's beautiful dress became worn out. Her arms became unsewn, and her hair stuck up all over. Baby grew old and shabby, but Anna loved her just as much. To her, baby was perfect. This is the kind of perfect you find at the store when everything is new and wrapped in plastic. Oh, there is the kind of perfect. And there is the kind of perfect that happens when something is loved and needed. Baby was perfect when Anna got her. Then through time, love, and suffering, baby became perfect. Anna needed a doll who could get out of the box and into a hospital bed. She didn't need a doll to look at. She needed a doll to hold on to. And this is the card that's with these babies. It says, please accept this Anna baby who has already gotten out of the box and is ready for you to hold on to. She has been rescued and is ready to be loved to perfection. So they give those out. And the very first child to get one of these Anna babies was Zion McAfee, who had the same type of cancer as Anna. And so we've since met them. So that's one of the things that, God makes beauty from ashes. And so this is one of the beautiful things that he has made from her story. So I work with new missionaries. And so I talk to them about Jesus, how he was perfect, but he became perfect. And what does that mean? I say that you are like this baby, that you're in the box right now. You've been trained, you've been vaccinated, you're all packed, you're ready to go. You're the perfect missionary. But I said, now it's time for you to get out of the box and you're going to become this kind of perfect, because the world doesn't need this kind of perfect. The world needs this kind of perfect. And this is people who have suffered and who have become real and loved and are the perfect comforters to other people who are suffering and real. So,
And
that's the legacy of Anna Baby.
I love that. And to those that are just listening to our podcast, I'll tell you what, we're gonna put a picture in the show notes of Anna Baby, because I'll tell you what, that is such a gift to all of us.
I've never thought about that other kind of perfect, and that visual is just perfect.
Right. If Jesus was perfect, then how did he become perfect? But he says he became perfect through suffering. And so that's what we're doing. He's perfecting us through the suffering that we're going through.
And so help do something for those that are just listening. I want you to just describe the perfect Anna Baby that you were holding. Hold it up and describe it, because some are just listening.
Well, she's kind of dirty and she's floppy, and we've had a nurse at the hospital sewed her arm back on. So she's got some patches on her and her hair is crazy and it just sticks up all over. Her clothes they've been washed, but they're tattered and torn, but she's just been a well-loved baby doll.
And it's that kind of perfect that the world needs.
Perfect. Yeah. And I
That
tell
is
our missionaries, I said, you're going to come back and your hair is going to look like this. So we don't have a book, but I do have a Facebook group, Pressing On to Know Him. So after Anna died, I didn't really want to live anymore. And I was walking in the park at Lake Hefner, and I said, how am I supposed to live? I don't want to. And God said, do not focus on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, and what is unseen is eternal. And I couldn't see Anna anymore, so I knew she was eternal now. And everything that I was dealing with, my grief, my troubles, everything I can see in this room, it's all temporary. And so that was not just how to survive the death of my daughter, that's how to survive every single day, no matter what you're going through. If you look around and you can see it, it's temporary. And so God wants us to focus on the things that are eternal. And so I sign everything, press on. Don't give up. Just keep going. And so that's kind of my tagline. But the Facebook group is called Pressing On to Know Him. And I just write things that I learned.
And
And that's from Hosea 6:3, isn't it?
Pressing on. Press
I
on
love
to know
that
Him.
verse.
Let us press on to know Him.
okay, so we'll put a link to that Facebook group. And I'll tell you what, you guys have blessed us today.
Oh, thank you for sharing your hearts.
Emily, you're feeling it right now. I
I'm
can
all
tell.
weepy.
So go on.
Richard and Marlo, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you for the wisdom you've given us. I'm just going to carry that Anna baby with me.
I've needed this today. This has been a heavy week, and I'm reminded that God doesn't promise us comfort and ease, but He promises that He's faithful. And John 16:33 is a verse that just shapes my life. It says, Jesus said, "I've told you these things that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have trouble, but take heart because I've overcome the world." And I'll tell you, Richard, Marlo, your story has helped us today to remember that God is faithful, even in the things we can't see. And so I thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing your story to be shared with those that are around us and in our sphere of influence. And you know what, Marlo, I want us to end, and we had just kind of mentioned this. This is a segue. This is a segue into our next season. Because, we've been over the last 10 episodes looking at how God helps us through loss. The next season, we want to rub shoulders with giants of the faith who are missionaries. And you are missionaries, and you have gone through loss. So prepare our listeners for next season as we connect with missionaries who are living out vibrant faith in their walk with the Lord.
One of the things I get to do, so I work with our new missionaries. So these are people who are in training. And these are people who have said, yes, I'll go wherever you send me, I'll go. That's an amazing group of people to work with. Usually there's only one or two in each church, so they're not used to being around other people who are just as excited about missions as they are. And so they all get together and they just sharpen one another, and it's really exciting place to work. I'm looking forward to next season of your podcast, because we do have some really awesome people who have said yes to wherever God sends them.
Richard, Marlo, thank you so much for spending time with us. We are so grateful. I'm so honored to get to serve the Lord beside you at the IMB, and I'm really thankful for your time.
I want to thank you for the wisdom that you and Marlo have shared today. Your time has been so precious to us.
Thanks for the chance to be on. We appreciate it.
It was our pleasure. We used to join grief groups all the time just so we could have a place to talk about Anna and to process that. And so this has given us an opportunity to talk about her. We don't always have that. And so we really appreciate you asking us.
Well, I can tell it's time to wrap up because my coffee's cold. We've learned in life, I've taught my wonderful daughter here, the very important truth that when you go through life, you need hope that Christ gives us because He's the only way to heaven. He's the only way to salvation. You need Jesus in your life more than you need the next breath that you take. You also need coffee because, man,
It's good.
it just makes your day to have a good cup of coffee, and you need some melody. Music is a breath to us. Music is like medicine. And here's the song by Eric Wall. And I hope that you take some time to continue that spiritual discipline of rubbing shoulders with giants of the faith.
Have a great day.
I'll sing to the God of galaxies, to whom all of creation sings. Inside your hand you hold everything, so I'll sing to the praise of your glory. I'll sing to the one and only King, who reigns for all eternity. You are the only one worthy, so I'll sing to the praise of your glory. Oh, as big as the heavens are deep as the heavens are wide as the heavens are high. So I wanna praise your glory. You are the one I seek, and you are the place I hide. So let this life of mine be to the praise of your glory. I'll sing to the one who came for me and brought me to life on Calvary. My holy God dying on a tree, and did it out of love for me. Oh, as big as the heavens are deep as the heavens are wide as the heavens are high. I wanna praise your glory. You are the one I seek, and you are the place I hide. Oh, let this life of mine be to the praise of your glory. As big as the heavens are deep as the heavens are wide as the heavens are high. I wanna praise your glory. Oh, you are the one I seek, and you are the place I hide. Let this life of mine be to the praise of your glory. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Thank you for joining us today. Remember, following Jesus does not keep us from tough times, but He is faithful to walk with us through them all. You can trust God even when it's hard to see His hand or hear His voice. As always, our prayer is Romans 15:13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may overflow with hope. Help us out by subscribing to our podcast and sharing it with others. To be a monthly supporter, click on the link in the show notes or go to our website at aliveforthfollowing.org. See you next time on Time with Giants.